Hey guys, welcome back. This is Long Story Short. I'm Beth LaMontagne Hall, your host for the evening. Tonight we have 4 storytellers. We have Amy Jane Larkin, we have Paul Doncaster, and we have Holly Raymer. And our 4th performer for the evening has fallen ill, and I will be filling in for her. So you get to hear a story that I've been working on. So yay. What have you guys been up to lately? We've been pretty busy, despite every crazy thing that's been happening. We have a podcast now, which you can find on all of your favorite podcast apps. So please go check that out and subscribe if you like the show tonight. We also have a YouTube channel now, which is what we're broadcasting on this evening. And you can watch this later or some of our other shows and snippets from the podcast. We also put together an advisory board, 6-member advisory board. We have a few members here this evening. And I wanted to say thank you very much to all those members. They are a great sounding board for helping me figure out what the heck to do with this thing when we can't do live shows, right? And then finally, we have been working on revamping our website, longstoryshortpod.com. We have all of our episodes up there, all the information about the show, and information about how to sign up, upcoming dates, and soon we're going to have a resources page where you can find books and classes and workshops and cheat sheets to help you up your storytelling game if that's something that you are interested in doing. So, speaking of upcoming shows, we have our next show is going to be September 8th here. And the theme for that show is Crushed Stories of Young Love. And so I don't think any of us probably have ever had any wild or weird or uncomfortable situations. We've always been in very healthy, wonderful relationships, right? So if you're interested in getting on that show, you can go to longstoryshortpod.com. There's a sheet, a little button right at the top. You just hit that and send me a message and we'll tell you all the details. Or you can, in the very back of the room where it's extremely dark right now, there is an email list. And you can sign up on the email list. We send a newsletter out about once a month. And it has all the information about who needs to, what shows need storytellers and how to get involved. And then we're going to close out 2021 on December 8th, and that show is going to be Family Heirloom. So again, if you are interested in getting on that show, or any of the shows, or getting involved with Long Story Short in any way, basically you need to either talk to me tonight or go to that email list or my website and just send me a message. All right, before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you people here for coming out. It is really nice to feel like I'm part of a community again, and I'm part of just people getting together and hearing stories about the crazy thing that is this life, right? And I also want to thank all the people who tuned in virtually. Let's make this a really good experience for those folks who are at home. Make sure that you give really warm and welcoming applause to everyone who comes up here. Long Story Short always has great audiences that make everybody feel really welcome. So, without further ado, we are going to kick off tonight with Paul Doncaster. And I have my little cheat intro here. Paul is the father of 2 outstanding young women and 1 blue tick beagle. He is a published author and spends his professional life listening to others then using their stories to design elegant and usable online experiences. He has been telling stories on stage since 2016 and has performed in 2 Moth Grand Slams and was featured in season 1 of the World Channel's TV showcase Stories from the Stage. Paul's done a couple of these, and he also did an episode of the podcast where he talked about how he puts his stories together. He's a really interesting guy. Let's give it up for Paul Doncaster.
Somebody else I know here? Oh. In 2017, the Niagara Falls Tourism Corporation adopted the slogan, "Where adventure comes naturally," which is a far cry from 1975 when I visited there with my family. And my father decided the slogan should be, "Where every hotel must have a pool," because you only have to look at the falls once and your kids are gonna say, "I have nothing to do here." But Niagara Falls ended up being the saving grace of a road trip vacation I took with my daughters in 2018, the following natural adventure notwithstanding. We took a triangle trip. So the first stop was Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, where my younger daughter always had wanted to go growing up. But after getting a chocolate tasting and having some custom Hershey bars made, she let it be known to me very quickly that she was a little too old for this, so on Hershey Park. Then we drove to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, where I was positive that my 15-year-old budding classic rock aficionado was just going to be swept away by everything that was there. But when she saw that it wasn't the shrine to Freddie Mercury that she expected it to be, she let it be known that she didn't really need to see the rest of it, and she hustled us through all the exhibits, so on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Niagara Falls ended up being, I wasn't real confident that I was going to have a strong end of the trip, but Niagara Falls ended up being good. I don't know if you've been there lately, but they must have taken my father's advice to heart, because it looks like they've spent the last 40 years turning it into a place where you can just give your kids some money and say, go, and come back to the hotel in time for dinner. So we stayed on the Canadian side of the falls to add to the adventure. We did the tour behind the falls, where you wear the yellow ponchos and you go in the tunnels, and then you come out at the stairs at the bottom and stand up and ooh and ah and get wet. We ate, I gave them their money, and they took off and hit every 3D show and every wax museum and every arcade that they could find. And we ended the day doing a zip line, a nighttime zip line, in front of the falls as they lit it up in beautiful colored lights. Really, really cool. On the way back to the hotel, my younger daughter turned to me and said, "What a really nice day this was, Dad." So I went, all right, trip saved. The next morning, 4th of July, we got up nice and early, had a quick bite, got everything together, went down to the car to load up before checking out, and Dad cannot find the car keys anywhere. You know the drill, right? Back up to the room, turn it upside down, empty out every bit of luggage, check it 3 times, check every pocket of every stitch of clothing that all 3 of us brought with us, 5 times, nothing, nowhere to be found. I called the closest Toyota dealership to see if I could get a key made. And a very, very nice Canadian customer service representative told me that they would be more than happy to cut us a new key. It was open. 4th of July, it was open because Canada. However, because I'm an American, we had to call an American dealership to get a key code for the key, all of which are closed because it's the 4th of July. So by this time, I'm playing the whole night previously in my head. You know how that happens, right? I can see the whole thing. What happened? Well, we went zip-lining. When we got to the place, they said, please empty all your valuables out of your pockets, put it in the little thing on the back of the harness. Once the zip line's done, please take all your valuables out of the harness. I know I took out my room key and my wallet because I have them with me. And so I didn't think I brought my key ring with me, but now I must have, because I went and took out of the pocket. I took out the wallet and the room key. I must have left the car keys in there. All I have to do, I know that's exactly what happened. All I have to do is go back to the zip line place and check the lost and found. So I leave my anxious daughters in the room, and I go to the lost and found, and a very, very nice Canadian staff member tells me, there's nothing in the office, but they'd be more than happy to do a harness check for me if I could come back in a few hours. So now checkout time is impending, and I realize that we're going to have to probably spend another night in Canada. So I go to the hotel desk, and a very, very nice Canadian woman at the hotel desk assures me that, yes, they can extend our stay for another night. I thank her. She says, good luck. And I go upstairs to tell the girls. They're on the bed, the older one's looking concerned, the younger one's looking a little bit more than concerned. And as I'm looking at them, I'm trying to figure out whether they're terrified by the thought of being trapped in a foreign country overnight with no way out, or whether they're replaying in their head every time I chastise them for losing something or forgetting something in the 15 years they've been on Earth, and the rage is slowly building. It's one of the two. I think it's the second one. So I sit on the bed, and I look at them, and I said, look, for as much shit as parents give their kids about losing or forgetting things, we're people too. I lose things and forget things just like you do. And sometimes it's a bigger deal than others, right? And this is one of those times. So all you can do is be calm, take things step by step, accept that this is the reality of it, and just do what you need to do to get out of it. And consider this. You now have a dumb dad story you can hold over my head for the rest of my life. That picked them up a little. I left them in the room. They're tapping out little SOS messages on social media, assuming maybe somebody from the American Embassy would swoop in and save us. But I go back to the zipline place. Nope, the harness sweep did not turn up anything. I checked every lost and found of every establishment between there and the hotel. Nobody has anything. By midday, my girls are still shunning me, and I didn't have anything else to do, so I walked the 3 miles to the Toyota dealership in the July heat just to see if there was anything I could do before the next day to make sure that the process moved smoothly and to also arrange for a tow to get our van there. Oh shit, the van. It's on the 4th floor of the hotel parking garage. How in the hell is a tow truck gonna get in and go all the way up to the 4th level and do all the maneuvering necessary to get our van out? Not to worry, the very nice Canadian person on the other end of the phone tells me, it happens more often than you'd think. As long as there aren't any unforeseen obstacles, it should be no problem. It was a very quiet night. I don't think any of us got any sleep. The next morning, I helped a very nice Canadian tow truck driver overcome 4 unforeseen obstacles and finally get our van out of the garage and down to the street. At the dealership, the phone call was made, a valid key code was obtained, and they cut me a new key, which would not turn in the ignition. 5 attempts to smooth out the edges and recut it while my daughters sat in the waiting area watching Maury Povich reveal paternity test results for 3 hours. Finally, at 3 in the afternoon on the 4th of July, $500 worth of unforeseen expenses later, we crossed into New York State, into the waiting arms of American freedom. Dumb dad's story fully intact, and validation that Niagara Falls is the place where adventure happens naturally. Kind of like short-term memory loss. Now, we come to the matter of those lost keys. This being a dumb dad story, I don't think I have to tell you that's not where it ends. But fortunately, I'm out of time, so I don't need to go too deep into it. So I'll leave you with this little bit of advice if this ever happens to you. Be calm, model confidence and composure for your kids, and no matter how ridiculous it may sound at the time, and no matter how much you think it defies every known law of physics and logic, check the bottom of the snack bag. Thank you for listening.
I'm sorry. I'm just not used to doing this, you guys. I'm usually like really smooth where it's like, thank you. And I'm like, whoosh, okay, here's the next person. But I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it tonight. I have a couple more people to practice with. All right, next up, we have a person I am so happy agreed to do this. We have Holly Raymer. Holly is a New Hampshire native and a journalist who started her career at Foster's Daily Democrat and has spent the last 25 years as a reporter at the Associated Press. She has a wide variety of beats over the years, from state politics to the presidential primary, to courts, crime, education, and healthcare. She's way more comfortable sharing other people's stories than her own, but wrote this essay last year as part of AP's effort to highlight personal experiences during the pandemic. I met Holly when I was also a reporter. She is a wonderful person and a friend, and I'm so happy to have her. So please welcome Holly Raymer.
Short. Yes, so I admit I rolled my eyes when my editor said in February of 2020 that the coronavirus would touch everything we do. And then in the year after New Hampshire had its first case, I wrote 187 stories about it, including this one. It's embarrassing to admit, but oddly comforting, that my ex-husband's husband and I share a slight crush on our state epidemiologist. When the coronavirus pandemic first hit, there was a lot of buzz about whether there'd be a baby boom 9 months after couples found themselves locked down together. Being a little more cynical, I wondered what would happen to the divorce rate. But I also started thinking about the effects on ex-partners. Frankly, I never thought I would have an ex-husband, let alone one who has a new husband. And I certainly never imagined that he'd become a main source of support during a pandemic. True, we've come a long way since we divorced 5 years ago. In 2018, we even danced together at a friend's wedding at the same spot where we had gotten married 19 years earlier. In the fall of 2019, attending his wedding with a boyfriend of my own, I was happy and hopeful for all of our futures. But a few months after that, I got dumped, and I was still struggling with that when the pandemic hit. So it very quickly became my ex-husband who listened to my parenting and work woes, saved magazines for me to read, and delivered not only toilet paper and pantry staples, but cakes and cookies and pies from a favorite bakery. It was sweet on multiple levels. Like many divorced parents, we had to weigh the risks of sending our teenage son back and forth between our homes. Initially, and it turned out naively, we decided it would be safer for him to stay with me for the duration. That lasted a long, challenging month, and I was relieved when my ex suggested we resume our 50-50 custody schedule. Eventually, the four of us, though, started getting together for virtual games of Pictionary and trivia, and we made plans to spend the 4th of July at the cabin that we co-own, but since the divorce had only visited separately. I teared up when my ex-husband said he would make fried chicken, my favorite. Honestly, at that point, crying without really knowing why was a little bit of a habit. When summer turned to fall, I think we were all relieved that my son's school resumed in-person instruction. But I realized that now that we were dropping him off and picking him up at school instead of each other's houses, I wasn't talking to my ex-husband and his husband in person. In some weeks, that was my only face-to-face adult conversation, and I missed it. But since we were all sort of in the same pod with my son going back and forth, we decided to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas together as well. For Thanksgiving, we had the usual turkey, but for Christmas, the four of us spent the day making what seemed like a mile of homemade sausage. And there's that old saying about how it's best not to watch too closely how either sausage or laws get made, but it just seemed fitting to embrace the mess, and it was delicious. But I couldn't help but remember that the year that we had got divorced, I had cried thinking about all the family traditions that we were losing. And my husband said, "We can still be a family. It'll just be different." And at the time, I didn't believe it for a second. When I wasn't busy working, I was busy sewing masks, hundreds and hundreds of masks for schools and hospitals and social service agencies, my colleagues at the Associated Press. I also sent them to friends and family, including my ex-husband, and I knew he would take the green one and give the blue one to his husband. They sent me a selfie from Home Depot where they were shopping for supplies to spruce up the yard that used to be mine. Foolishly, I also sent one to the guy who had dumped me. Did I really expect that he would show up outside my window wearing his mask, holding a boombox like John Cusack in that socially distant scene from Say Anything? Not really. And I wasn't surprised by the bland, polite thank you note that landed in my mailbox. But it did hurt, which just goes to show that sometimes the mask does protect the wearer more than it protects others. For that moment of foolishness, I blame New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, whose tweet, and this was way before he turned out to be such a creep, his tweet about reaching out to others hit me hard. 3-word sentences can make all the difference, he said. I miss you. I love you. Thankfully, my own governor, Chris Sununu, is not quite so sappy. Coffee and chocolate, that's how I'm getting through a lot of this. I probably should start exercising a little bit more, he said at a news conference, taking the words right out of my mouth. When I shared an early version of this essay with my ex-husband and his husband, they both said they loved it. And my ex texted me and he said, I do love you, and I'm here for you now and going forward. So coffee, chocolate, and the return of a friendship I thought I had lost forever. Someday I will get back to my kickboxing gym, but for now, this will do just fine. And in case you're wondering, the state epidemiologist is married, but I found someone else and I'm quite happy.
Thank you so much, Holly. Let's give it up for Holly one more time. All right. Okay, so we're back here, and it's like a live show, and there's a bar, and we get to have an intermission. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. So, as somebody reminded me at the intermission, typically we do a segment at this time, which I call the Pink Pumpkin, which is I harass everybody in the audience to put their name in the pumpkin, and then we pull one out randomly. And then that person comes up from out of the audience and tells a story totally on the fly. And it actually goes way better most times than you would think that scenario would go. But I was like, I don't know if tonight is the right night to do that. I don't know. But I'm totally going to do it next time. So if you come to next show, please throw your name in the pink pumpkin, because I usually have to really beat people to put their name in there. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to do a story, and then we're going to bring up one more person for the second half. And I just started working on this one, so it's kind of a little rough, and I shouldn't downplay myself. I should play myself up, right? Okay, shh. Okay, this one I'm calling Chuck, all right? All right. So I have a daughter who is in the 3rd grade, and ever since she started going to school, she has been so upset that she doesn't get to take the bus. And we live close enough where we can walk, which I think is amazing and a great perk, but she thinks it's horrible, and she just really, really wants to take the bus. And she really wants to take the bus because she doesn't know how horrible riding the school bus is. So I did school mostly in the 80s and a little in the 90s. And I rode the bus almost the entire time from 1st grade to graduation. And the bus was, the route that I was on was the outskirts of town. So it was the poorest kids and the richest kids, the worst houses and the nicest houses. So it was this very interesting mix, and it taught me a lot being on the school bus, like a lot of swear words and a lot about professional wrestling. And so one of the things that has always stuck with me is how it's the school bus is just a physically hostile environment, right? So in the summertime, it's like this stew of BO and like sticky legs on those green vinyl seats. And they have those windows where you have to press in like this to get them to go down. And the cruel part of those windows is that when you put down your window, the breeze goes to the person behind you, right? And so I'm sitting there as a 13-year-old with like perfectly like poofed hair, and like Kevin puts down the window and like this look is all over. So, and then in the winter, it's like a refrigerator car, like absolutely no heat. And when it rains, like the toxic fumes are just like heavy in the air. Like it's the kind of environment where they would send bad people in the dystopian novel, right? Like it's just not a place you want to be. So, but one thing that did make my bus ride great was my bus driver, Chuck. And he lived diagonally across from me growing up. He was the manager of a campground that was there. And he and his wife would drive buses during the school year. And he had a really great family. They had these giant Great Danes, which I guess comes in handy when you're the manager of a campground in Rochester, New Hampshire. And his kids were cool. They were like super 80s, like in my memory, where it was like the oldest son had like the feathered shoulder length hair and like the shirt that was cut to here and like the cut off jean shorts all summer long, and swam in them. So you guys know what I'm talking about. Excuse me. So then, so Chuck was my bus driver, and he had like dirty blonde hair and those tattoos that like old military guys have where they're like really faded. And he just really seemed to enjoy his job. He would do things where he knew all the kids' names, and he would always like say hi to you when you got on the bus, and was like very happy. And he would do things like in the spring when the frost heaves would come up every once in a while, instead of slowing down for the bumps, he'd like gun it and like launch us out of our seats, and we'd be like, woo! And he also really loved music. And I remember the first time I ever heard the Beastie Boys was on the bus, because this kid brought in like a boom box, and Chuck was like, what do you got? And he's like, the Beastie Boys? He's like, let's hear some. And so we just played the Beastie Boys. And then eventually Chuck decided that he needed some tunes. So he installed these speakers in the bus. And he was also very kind about it, where he put one up near him and then one in the back of the bus as well, so the kids could enjoy the music. I don't know if he was supposed to put speakers inside of a public school bus, but he did. And we were always listening to classic rock, so it would be like a lot of Aerosmith and Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd was definitely his favorite. I remember kind of sitting toward the front of the bus as I was waiting to get off, and he's talking Pink Floyd with one of the boys, and he's like, yeah, so you've seen The Wall, right? And the kid's like, no. And then Chuck turns and is like, you haven't seen The Wall? And he's like, no, I haven't. How could you have not seen The Wall? I'm bringing it in tomorrow. I'm going to let you borrow it. And the next day he comes in and brings in a VHS tape of The Wall and is like, here, watch this. Which I'm like, what? Okay, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I guess his mom and dad were fine with that. And then, so Chuck ruled. Everybody loved him. He was the best. So one day in... I'm going to say about 7th grade, I go to get on the bus, and Chuck isn't there. It's this other woman. She has this halo of bleach blonde hair that's very white and poofed and caked on, very heavy caked on makeup. And she has these super long fingernails, so she'd kind of drive like this. And I was just like, oh, okay. So I go and I sit with my friend like I do every single day, and we're talking. And after a few minutes, the bus driver goes, shh. And I'm like, keep talking. And she's like, shh, stop talking. And I'm like, me? I'm just talking. Yes, I don't want you to talk anymore. It's distracting me. Okay. So then the next day, same thing happens, and she doesn't like my talking. She's like, you know what? You come sit right over here. And she points to the seat that's across from in the front, which everybody here knows is the bad kid's seat. And I'm like, what? I have to sit there. So I sit there, and, after a couple days of this, I'm like, who is this person? Well, this, my friends, was Gloria. Everybody soon learned to hate Gloria. So the wise ass punk boys who sat in the back didn't like her and would mouth off to her all the time. And, she clearly did not like me and my friend who liked to talk. And so eventually, after a couple months of Gloria riding the bus, she had put us all in these areas of punishment throughout the bus. So we're all sitting really far away from each other so that it would be complete silence throughout the bus ride, which maintaining that at the teenager level is extremely difficult. So soon everybody's hatred of Gloria like kind of becomes this thing that we're talking about all the time. So I learned from another boy on the bus that apparently Gloria is dating the boss of the bus company, and that's why she gets to drive our bus, because we have the best route, and they made Chuck do another route, which is some crazy misogynistic 80s bullshit right there. It's like, oh, she's sleeping with the boss, so she gets to pick our sweet-ass route. Okay, whatever. So, but that was apparent. I was 13. I believed it. I don't know. So, finally, one day, I don't know what happened, but apparently the kids had had enough. And some of the boys in the back they just had enough with Gloria. And I hear, kind of softly at first, and then it got a little louder and a little louder. And it was, Gloria, 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 Gloria. And soon it's like this chorus of teenagers being like, Gloria, Gloria, I think you're not. And I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening. This is amazing. I'm singing along. This is great. And Gloria was so mad. So mad. And at that moment, I kind of looked at her and I thought, ooh, I feel a little bad. And I did feel bad because maybe Gloria needed this job. Maybe she was on hard times and like this was the gig that she wanted. Or maybe she was like, all these other dudes are driving a bus. I'm a lady. I can drive a bus too. Or who knows why? Maybe she was trying to break down barriers and we were breaking down her soul. I don't know. Not too long after that, I go out to the bus stop, and I go to get on, and the door opens, and who do I see before me but Chuck? Chuck! And he's like, Beth, come on, get on the bus. And so I get on the bus, and I sit with my friend, and we're, like, talking. We're like, yeah, I can't believe it's Chuck. This is amazing. So then I'm like one of the first kids to get on the bus. So I have the pleasure of seeing every other kid on the bus route come on and be like, sweet, Chuck's back, guys. And finally we get to the end of the route, and this really kind of obnoxious, boisterous teenage boy gets on, and he starts walking down the aisle, and he's like, you guys, we got Chuck back. Chuck, 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 Chuck. And he starts like chanting Chuck. And every other kid is like, obviously, joins in and starts chanting Chuck, Chuck, Chuck. And I look up and Chuck is just kind of smiling. And Chuck is a dude who didn't really seem to care a whole lot about what other people thought of him. He definitely did things to the beat of his own drum. But I'd like to think that at that moment, what we thought of Chuck mattered. So that's my story about Chuck. Thank you. That dude truly was the best. All right. Thank you for entertaining my fill-in story. Next up, we have another friend of mine, Amy Jane Larkin. She is an illustrator and an artist who lives in Arundel, Maine, with her husband, grandmother, and dog Skynet. She's a volunteer leader on the Maine People's Alliance Citizen Lobbying Team. She helps train folks on how to talk to their legislators. She loves to cook, get dressed up, and feels overjoyed to be hugging friends again. Please welcome Amy Jane Larkin.
I am also short. In college, my friends and I would joke that my advisor, Rick Brown, made excellent use of child labor, which was not a great joke, but definitely one a 20-year-old would make. We weren't really kids, but he was great at complimenting us into committing to really strange and elaborate projects. And I would go visit him in his office, and next thing I knew, I would be at his workshop on a Saturday with 12 other students learning how to make rabbit skin glue for fun. It wasn't for everybody, but I was really hooked. His wife, Laura, was my woodworking professor, and they were a team, and they collaborated on these really massive projects tackling historic recreations of things like the Turtle, which was the first ever submarine that held one person and was made out of wood during the Revolutionary War. They recreated it out of a single tree, hollowed out, and several kinds of metal with a team of students, timber framers, and professors. And it was such a big deal that they were on the Discovery Channel and got to test it at the Naval Academy. So I was really impressed and eager to be a part of anything they did. I went to see Rick at the start of my junior year, and he told me that he and Laura were planning a trip to Poland to document old wooden churches, and before I knew why, I signed up. And the idea from the trip came from another trip they had taken where they had met the Polish cultural minister who had told them about students during World War II documenting synagogues, sometimes under the cover of night, by drawing, and in some cases, these drawings were all that remained of the buildings. So he suggested that they take a team of students and go to Poland and document some old wooden churches that were in danger of being lost to time or fire or just being replaced. And they thought this was a great idea, and they built a course around it. So I was so excited about this trip that I convinced my then off and on again boyfriend and future husband, Sean, to go with me. At the time, he was working for architects creating 3D renderings and animation. So his skills kind of perfectly fit the trip, and I thought he would have a great time and that Rick and Laura would really like him. So we went right after school got out in late May, and we traveled for 16 days. It was amazing. We were really immersed in Polish culture, and for the last week, we stayed in one town, filling their one small motel, and they had to hire on extra townswomen to make us breakfast each day. It was really nice. We documented 2 churches while we were there, each several hundred years old, top to bottom. We took measurements, photos, we made CAD plans, and detailed drawings of a lot of the architecture. And Sean brought a fancy new digital SLR, which was really exciting, and he was able to capture all the information he needed to be able to create a really accurate 3D model. But it was also an opportunity for him to learn photography that he sort of leapt headfirst into. We would be walking back from dinner to our motel, and we would notice that Sean was missing, and I would backtrack for a while, and I would find him crouched down somewhere taking a photo of a flower on the side of the road or a door handle he liked. And it was really fun to watch, if not a little ridiculous. He took over 2,000 photos while we were there, which right now may not seem like that many, but at the time we had to download batches and delete each night to make room for new ones on the memory card. So it was really fun. I felt like we had taken trips before together, briefly with friends, but this was like 2.5 weeks together, and I think we started to see how much we worked as a couple. And it did not hurt that everywhere we went, people taught us drinking songs, gave us a lot of hugs, and handed us shots of vodka, because that's what you do in Poland. So it was very easy to get along. Rick and Laura decided to do the second trip in a new town, the same trip, I should say, a second time in a new town my senior year. And I signed up immediately, but Sean had trouble getting the time off from work, so he couldn't go with us. But he did send me with his camera so that I could be a part of the photography team. And I was really nervous, but super excited, so I packed it in my camera bag as my carry-on so that it could be with me at all times. And I had also learned the previous year to carry my passport and my traveler's checks in a dweeby pouch around my waist under my clothes, which made me feel really ridiculous, but most people on the trip did it as well. And it made sense to be safe and prepared wherever we went, because we were moving really quickly. That second year, we started our trip in Krakow, and our last connecting flight was super late, and still somehow we sat on the plane for a while. So when we were finally able to get on a bus, Rick and Laura and our translator, Magda, told us just to grab our carry-ons and take them with us in case our bus driver would leave the bus unattended. So we grabbed our bags and we headed into the city. And we went to a restaurant that we had been to the year before, so I was really excited. I knew I was going to have some borscht, excited for beets, and that I could have a Zwiec or another easy-drinking Polish lager, and I felt hugely relieved after about 20 hours of travel. It didn't matter that we were all exhausted. We had a really nice meal, and when we got up to leave, I reached under my chair, and I could not feel that camera bag. So I started looking under the table. I started looking under the chairs of the people next to me, and still no camera. My closest friend on the trip, Kara, noticed that I was visibly flustered and started looking with me. And when we looked under all the chairs and all the tables of our group and still couldn't find it, she went to get Laura and our translator, Magda, who talked with the staff, asked if there was anywhere else we could look, if anybody had seen anything. We checked the other dining room, we checked bathrooms, we checked a coat room, and we could still not find that bag. Just one bag had been stolen while we were at lunch, and it was my bag. And I had not made it even to the hotel, and Sean's fancy camera was gone, which was all I could think about until I also remembered that I had put my money and my passport in that bag as well. So everything I had was gone other than my clothes. I was in a bit of a fog, as you might imagine. We all went out onto the street, and I focused all my energy on not crying or throwing up. Everybody went on to the hotel, but Rick, Laura, and Magda took me to a really quiet, beautiful old bar down the street and gave me a shot of vodka, as you do in Poland, and told me everything would be okay. They had some emergency funds, so I could use that for meals while we were there, and we could possibly even try to get like a wire transfer of some cash from family when we went to the next town. They also told me that I needed to call and cancel my credit card, and in a brief moment of victory, I had memorized that number, so I got to show off when I got the group emergency cell phone. And then Magda took me to the police station so we could file a report. After what felt like a million questions, the officer told us that my passport was likely sitting in a trash bin somewhere because whoever took my bag only cared about the $2,500 camera and lenses, which was a fun treat for me to know. And he also told me that if I had time, I could start working my way through the pawn shops in town and maybe get to buy my camera back. Another great suggestion. But mostly the police report was just a formality so that I could take it to the consulate next day when I got to go beg for a temporary passport. So by the time we finished, everybody was wrapping up dinner. I didn't eat. We went back to the hotel, and I kind of wanted to go to bed. But my friend Kara told me that we were going to celebrate somebody's birthday that night, so I had to come out in the hall. I also knew from the previous trip that that meant there would be cake, which I was not about to argue with, given the day that I had had. So I bucked up and went in the hall. We all gathered and turned off some lights, whatever we could find. Everybody started singing, and somebody carried a cake with some lit candles out into the hallway, and I realized that everybody was looking at me and saying my name when it came time, so I finally burst into tears when I blew out the candles. It was very sweet. They also gave me 5 disposable cameras for the trip and a tiny replica of a famous church bell in Krakow that I could attach to the one bag I had left, so I always knew where it was, which is a very solid burn. I felt really grateful and relieved. I got a lot of hugs. And then I sort of realized what I had to do next. Kara very kindly handed me her phone card, and I walked down the street to a payphone so that I could tell Sean that I had lost his camera. He knew right away that something was wrong, so I assured him I was okay. Mostly he was just really kind and comforting. I don't know what I expected, but he assured me that my happiness and my safety was way more important than the camera, and I just kept insisting I was going to find a way to buy him a new one soon, and he just kept telling me that he hoped I could find a way to enjoy the rest of the trip. It was at least 2 years after that before we actually admitted we really loved each other. But those 2 trips to Poland showed me a lot about what our life would be like together. And that dang camera, it showed me first how excitable he was, how much he loved learning new things, and how everyone around us was so impressed by that. And second, it showed me how much he really cared about me. So I hope whoever ended up with it really enjoyed the damn thing. Thanks.
Well, Amy, I have to tell you, I was leaving my phone on the back table like a rookie, but I grabbed it because maybe somebody here might steal it. I don't know. But so thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I'm really excited that we get to do this again. If you want to do a show, come talk to me, sign up for the email list, whatever you want to do. Otherwise, have a wonderful night. Thank you.